never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
As we bid farewell to number 45, President Trump, and welcome 4 more years of communism, it would be extremely unjust and extremely unpatriotic of me not to highlight and showcase our president's remarkable track record and accomplishments over the last 4 years. After all, he is the president of the United States. Regardless of what anybody thinks of him, we owe him the respect and the courtesy and a proper goodbye. Today, I recognize all the good that President Trump has done for this nation. Plus, the real reason Trump was suspended from social media. Nope, it has nothing to do with inciting violence. CNN and those sneaky liberals are at it again. But first, we'll tackle President Trump and all the accomplishments that he's done in his last 4 years. Let's have a look. So we start with the unprecedented economic boom that President Trump was very much responsible of. There's no disputing what he's done for the economy. We've smashed records. We've done amazing deals with allies. He's gotten business done. And we've thrived as an economy. And there's no reason that we shouldn't take a moment to reflect and recognize all of that. Before the China virus invaded our shores, Trump built the world's most prosperous economy. America gained 7 million new jobs, more than 3 times government expert projections. The unemployment rate reached 3.5%, the lowest in half a century. He achieved 40 months in a row with more job openings than job hirings, and jobless claims hit a nearly 50-year low. When it comes to the economy, nobody got this nation on track and quicker than Trump did. Income rose in every single metro area in the United States for the first time in nearly 3 decades. He delivered a future of great promise and opportunity for citizens of all backgrounds. Unemployment for women hit its all-time lowest rate in nearly 70 years, and he lifted nearly 7 million people off of food stamps. Trump wasn't responsible for the bottom 50% of American households seeing a 40% increase in net worth. He brought jobs, factories, and industries back to the United States, and he created more than 1.2 million manufacturing and construction jobs. He hit record stock market numbers and record 401ks. The stock market loved this man. There's no disputing it. The Dow closed above 20,000 for the first time in 2017 and topped 30,000 in 2020. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ have repeatedly notched record highs. He achieved a record-setting economic comeback by rejecting blanket lockdowns, and during the third quarter in 2020, the economy grew at a rate of 33.1%, the most rapid GDP growth ever recorded, and that was coming off of the coronavirus pandemic. Jobs have been recovered 23 times faster than the previous administration's recovery, and unemployment fell to 6.7% in December from a pandemic peak of 14.7% in April. A remarkable recovery, showing strengths of confidence and reassurance to the American people, beating expectations of well over 10% unemployment through the end of 2020. Household net worths rose $7.4 trillion in Q2 2020 to $112 trillion, an all-time high. And when it came to tax relief for the middle class, Trump passed a $3.2 trillion in historic tax relief and reformed the tax code. More than 6 million Americans Workers received wage increases, bonuses, and increased benefits thanks to all of these tax cuts. And he cut the business tax rate from 35%, the highest in the developed world, all the way down to 21%. The list goes on and on. Remarkable achievements that President Trump has been solely responsible for over the last 4 years. Over $1.5 trillion was repatriated to the United States from overseas. And when it came to jobs and investments, he poured them into opportunity zones. He encouraged growth in areas where we never thought growth was even possible. Created nearly 9,000 opportunity zones where capital gains or long-term investments are taxed at zero. These opportunity zones attracted $75 billion in funds and drove $52 billion of new investments in economically distressed communities, creating at least 500 million jobs, 500 million new jobs, 500 million jobs he created from these opportunity zones. Trump also went on to Americans now having more money in their pocket. He cut the red tape in healthcare, providing Americans with more affordable healthcare and saving Americans nearly 10% on prescription drugs. He signed 16 pieces of deregulatory legislation that will result now in $40 billion increase in annual real incomes. Trump was also responsible for a historic support to the American farmers, an industry that this country so desperately needed help with. He successfully negotiated more than 50 agreements with countries around the world to increase foreign market access and boost exports of American agricultural products, supporting more than 1 million new American jobs. He was a master negotiator. He got countries to agree with us on things that we never thought was possible. He got China to lift the ban on poultry, opening its market to beef, and agreed to purchase at least $80 billion of American agriculture products in the next 2 years. The European Union agreed to increase beef imports by 180% and open up its market to more imports of soybean. He got South Korea to lift its ban on American poultry and eggs and agreed to provide market access for record exports of American rice. He got Argentina to lift its ban on American pork. He got Brazil to agree to increase wheat imports by $180 million a year and raised its quotas for purchases of United States ethanol. Guatemala and Tunisia opened up their markets to American eggs. And when it comes to American energy independence, he unleashed America's oil and natural gas potential. For the first time ever, in nearly 70 years, the United States has become a net energy exporter. The United States is now #1 producer of oil and natural gas in the world. Natural gas production reached a record of 34.9 quads in 2019, following a record high production in 2018 and 2017. As far as investing in America's workers and family, we all know that President Trump put America first. He loved the American people, he loved the American economy, and he continued to put all of his focus into protecting us, our income, and our jobs. Nearly 40 million families benefited from the child tax credit, receiving an average benefit of $2,200, total credits of approximately $88 billion. He secured an additional $3.5 billion in the coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security, the CARES Act, to help families and first responders with child care needs. He also created the first ever paid family leave tax credit for employees earning $72,000 or less. He was a genius with getting these tax credits to the American people so we can put more money back in our pocket. The economy thrived because of all of this. And when it came to women, he advanced women's economic empowerment. He launched the Women Entrepreneurs Financial Initiative, the WEFI, with 13 other nations, and announced a $50 million donation on behalf of the United States to WEFI, providing more capital to women-owned businesses around the world. Trump was also greatly responsible for many, many other incredible accomplishments, including rescuing the American economy with nearly $3.4 trillion in relief, the largest financial package in history. Secured an initial $8.3 billion in coronavirus Preparedness and Response Act, supporting the development of treatments and vaccines, and to procure critical medical supplies and equipment. And he signed the $100 billion Families First Coronavirus Act, guaranteeing free coronavirus testing, emergency paid sick leave and family leave, Medicaid funding, and food assistance. He also signed the PPE and Healthcare Enhancement Act, adding an additional $310 billion to replenish the program, all to avoid the economy from collapsing and entering into the greatest recession we would have ever experienced in our lifetime. But the biggest feat out of all of this is his border protection. He secured our borders. With over 400 miles of the world's most robust and advanced border wall, Trump was responsible for illegal crossings plummeting by over 87% where the walls were constructed. And because of all this prevention of illegal border crossings, he was able to take action to seize illegal drugs and punish those preying on innocent Americans. He seized tens of thousands of kilograms of heroin and thousands of kilograms of fentanyl since 2017. The Department of Justice prosecuted more fentanyl traffickers than ever before, dismantled 3,000 drug trafficking organizations, and seized enough fentanyl to kill 105,000 Americans. The Department of Justice charged more than 65 defendants, collectively responsible for distributing over 45 million opiate pills. President Trump was a president for the people. He fought for the American people. He fought for our jobs. He fought to drain corruption, the swamp. He fought to give America back to the people. He said it from day one. That was his mission, and that is what he worked so tirelessly on throughout the last 4 years. It's going to be sad to see 45 go. We just don't know what's going to happen with the new administration, but I, for one, will welcome the Biden administration as a respectable American citizen. After all, I am an American. Biden is going to be the next president of the United States, and as an American citizen, he's going to be my president of the United States, whether I like it or not, but I will have respect for the man. But it will be very sad to see Trump leave office. Before we head on to our next topic, I'd like to play a little bit of a farewell video for you all as we see President Trump off, and we wish him the best of luck in his many ventures to come over the next few years.
Station, this is your president. Do you hear me?
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard, and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
Well, it's no surprise that America is under attack. Our freedom of speech is constantly in jeopardy, and it all started when Jack Dorsey over at Twitter decided to suspend the President of the United States' Twitter account. And it all seemed a little bit suspicious and sneaky as to why they were doing it. After all, Trump didn't really incite violence. He just merely suggested that peaceful head on down to the Capitol and engage in a peaceful protest. Well, it turned into violence, sadly, and unfortunately put a everlasting mark of negativity on our American history. But that was neither here nor there when it came to actually what Trump suggested. So we're all trying to figure out here, why exactly did the social media accounts take such drastic measures to silence the president of the United States? What was the real agenda? What are these guys really up to? Well, I did a little bit of digging and some research, and I found out that it wasn't the fact that they were trying to silence one man's voice after all. It has to do with the fact that the media companies, those particularly on the left, are nervous and scared of their plummeting ratings, and they need to take drastic measures to gain back control of the media world. And what better way to do that than CNN start attacking the likes of Fox and Newsmax and do everything they can to get their program off of the air. And that's exactly what Fox or CNN has been doing, because after all, CNN's ratings have been drastically plummeting over the last few years. They are scared about how much viewership they are losing to Fox, Newsmax, AON, and other news sources that are starting to explode onto the scene. Parler was a big part of the threat. They removed Parler. They're now trying to get the networks to remove Fox. Tucker Carlson spoke about it, and now Grant Stinchfield is going to speak about it over at Newsmax. Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what Grant has to say about the insanity of CNN and the left trying to now cancel right-wing media.
Heard by now, CNN wants all of us gone. Newsmax, the fourth most watched cable news network on TV, it wants us vaporized off your flat screen, demanding the big cable and satellite providers remove us from their lineups. OAN too, by the way.
We're going to have to figure out the OANN and Newsmax problem. You know, that these companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and such to be bringing them into tens of millions of homes.
Makes you shake your head. You see how it never ends with the left. You bow to their demands once, they want you destroyed. First, it's Twitter accounts, then an entire social media platform, now news outlets. This segment on CNN's Reliable Sources is a frightening look at the plans they have to go after free speech, conservative speech. So let's break it down to show you the hypocrisy in their vindictive, anti-competitive rhetoric.
It's really hard because what's happening is people are able to seek out the information that makes them feel good. That is what's happening, is that people have so much choice now. They can choose what their news sources are. They can choose what influencers they want to follow. And they can try to seal out anything that helps them question that.
All right, so do you understand what he just declared? That choices are not good because right now you can choose not to watch them. They don't want you to have those kinds of choices. They want a monopoly on speech, on liberal thinking. Also, at the heart of all of this is that former Facebook executive, Alex Stamos, you just heard talking, doesn't think any of you are capable of critically thinking. Y'all are too dumb to be left to choose your own news sources. That's what he truly believes. CNN needs to feed you everything you need to hear. And if you think differently than they do, then they'll pull the plug on any source that offers a counter opinion.
We have given a lot of leeway, both in the traditional media and on social media, to people to have a very broad range of political views.
All right, who is given leeway for a broad range of political views? Who? The government? The broad range of political views and our ability to disseminate and discuss them as Americans is what makes this country great. It's called freedom of speech. The audacity of this man to claim, quote, too much leeway is given to different and differing views, all that is appalling. And remember, once the Electoral College spoke, Newsmax accepted Joe Biden as the president-elect. Yes, we talked about allegations of election fraud and lots of evidence of it, but I and the network never declared it was stolen as fact. I simply pleaded for all allegations to be investigated. Now, you might not like it, but it's the responsible way to report on what happened. And that's the irony in all of this. They criticize us when it's CNN and MSNBC that lack any sort of journalistic standards. And their attacks on us prove it.
Back into the...
So as you can see here, clearly, Newsmax is being threatened. Fox News is being threatened by the likes of CNN because they are now worried about their ratings. They're worried about social media taking over. They're worried about right-wing gaining momentum on left-wing media. The ratings have do all the talking. And if you're going to hit a company or hit a news media agency, you hit it with their pocketbook. That's where you hit the most. So let's take a look at the keyboard warrior cam and think about and see what the viewers or the American people have to say about the insanity of CNN actually trying to cancel right-wing media. So Keith says, all of our conservative news outlets can be silenced. Money can do a lot. People can be forced out of business by threats. Look at what has happened. Look at what has happened to the dozens of mainstream media outlets that used to be objective. China has a financial interest in many. Check it out for yourself. And they do. And China has a lot of influence right now, a tremendous amount of influence on the media industry. And it's no surprise that we're going to start to see more of this over the next few years. It's no surprise that we're going to see more of a crackdown because, let's be honest, China owns half the left. And they are now out to put a stop on a lot of the news that gets produced to the American people. Karen says, how about we cancel CNN? Because their inability to report factual, upstanding news. They would rather report garbage and hide factual info to keep the public in the dark. Shame on them. Absolutely. When are we going to cancel CNN? When do we actually get on to that? That should be the next thing that we cancel. Brenda says they're scared of the truth. I don't think Newsmax can be forced out with the great ratings that they bring. Ridiculous and desperate. And that's exactly what's going on. Newsmax is exploding onto the scene. They are gaining millions of viewers. And it's because a lot of people feel like they are being lied to. They feel like a lot of the left-wing media lies to them. So now they are jumping ship and they're moving over to news that actually reports the news. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that CNN or that Newsmax isn't biased towards the right, because they absolutely are. But they contradict, they counterbalance what left-wing media has to say. And I think that's very important. It's no different than the U.S. government working with the Democratic Party and the Republican Party balancing each other. We need that counterbalance to run a proper democracy. So it's the same thing. We do need left-wing media and right-wing media. It's only going to help give everybody a different perspective. But when you try to ram one media source down your throat and you don't give the viewers an option to see the other side of the story, that's called communism. That's when you ram news down people's throat, propaganda, and you force them to see one side of the story. Alcida says, if you think they will stop with little companies, you better think again. If we don't fight the suppression of freedom of speech, then you deserve to be enslaved like a third world country. That's exactly what's happening here. And it's only going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And it all started with masks, then lockdowns, then locking down businesses, ruining people's lives, then mandated vaccines, kids out of school. I mean, where does it end? The insanity continues to destroy America, and no one is putting their foot down. Darren says, of course they do. They want complete control of your mind. This is on purpose. A complete and total control of people is what they want. MSM Media has been pounding this in people's heads for about a year. They are brainwashed, and it worked. Mark says they are scared of what's coming. They are going bankrupt and on a moment too soon. absolutely what's happening. It's a very big threat. I personally don't think this had anything to do with trying to silence the president. I think it had to do with left-wing media being nervous that they can't control the news. I think there's a much bigger picture here. They can't control the news. The ratings are plummeting. People aren't listening to them anymore. People are going to social media. So what better way to then get Jack Dorsey and everybody on board and say, hey, let's cut out the conservative information. Let's call it misinformation. Shut them down and people might start watching the news again. That's step one. Now you've got the government coming in with Section 230. And if that's repealed, that's going to basically end social media. Because Section 230 gives them immunity, social media companies immunity to not have to hold the information or not be held liable for the information that's put up on their social media platforms. So it's one little step after the next that's slowly shutting down our freedom of speech. And I think that if we don't put our foot down and we challenge all of this, that we're going to start to see our First Amendment rights diminished even further. Owen says, not the biggest fan of Newsmax, but it's a freedom of press. I read a lot from CNN. I read a lot from CNN, and sometimes the opinion articles do go too far. I truly hope this is a spin on truth and gains no traction. Sadly, I don't think it is a spin on truth. I think there's a real issue here. And I think if we don't nip it in the butt ASAP, that it is going to continue to get out of control. And I think that we all need to be very worried about the situation. Trish says, I've stopped watching all news except Newsmax. So done with the lies, and you all rock in my opinion. Truth will set you free. I believe in that. God bless. Absolutely. You know, I always tell people, I think it's important that you learn from both sides. I think it's important that you take what CNN gives you with a grain of salt and take what Fox News gives you, and you try to form your own opinion. It's only healthy. It's debate at the end of the day. All news is supposed to be unbiased media. Sadly, that's not the case anymore. Everybody's pushing their own agenda. But if you can learn a little bit from each side, form your own opinion, then I think you'll really start to uncover and see the real truth in American politics. Carla says, because it's the end of time, new world order, government run, mark of the beast, Jesus is coming. I can only hope. I'd love for Jesus to come down and just kind of slap everybody around and say, enough. Everybody get along. Let's work together as a country instead of trying to kill each other. Rachel says, American people need y'all telling us the truth. So many others shove what they want us to believe down our throats. You all keep up the good work. Well, it's not going to be able to be that way soon if we lose half of our rights. Beth says, a bit like North Korea, don't you think? These people obviously have many things to hide. It's the same tone and message that we've been trying to get across to you for the last week. It's very dangerous what's happening. Freedom of speech continues to be in jeopardy. We are letting this country go. Biden coming in is not going to really help. I don't see how he's going to put his foot down, especially when he's going to become a puppet president and be told what to do by the likes of the Democratic Party. We can only hope that he does put his foot down. Because what's happening right now is very dangerous, and it's a grave threat to us as Americans. It's a grave threat to our freedoms. So CNN's trying to cancel Fox. CNN's trying to cancel news media. Or Newsmax. CNN's basically trying to cancel the right. And if our country has any decency left, both Republicans and Democrats will start to put their foot down against the madness. Because no one deserves to be silenced at the end of the day, regardless if it's their companies or not. We all deserve to have a voice, the president especially. And we all deserve to be able to gain a fair perspective on both sides. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Tomorrow, Inauguration Day. Be very interesting to see what unfolds over the next 24 hours leading up to the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden. Thank you guys so much. You have a wonderful evening, and we will see you tomorrow here live at 3 o'clock under a new president, under new Democratic leadership. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out YouMadeItPolitical.com.